G'day, Nico. Good to see you again. Episode 3, and what a place to be. We're sitting downstairs.
Oh no, how good is this? Underneath the Grand Hotel in Mildura.
In what would you call this room?
We'd call this the beer barrel cellar. Is that the term?
Yeah, that'd be it.
Let's just say we're deep under the Grand Hotel.
And now turned into a restaurant. And we're with a guy whose accolades are actually incredible. So apart from being an advocate for Mildura, he's a celebrity chef,
Published author,
has his own beer label,
TV celebrity,
he has his own wine label.
and he's talking to us.
Welcome to the podcast, Steph.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased and very chuffed and honored that you are interested in my story. And so I'll do my best. But we can get straight into the heart of the matter, can't we?
Yeah. Let's get it straight into your childhood, obviously where you were.
So I was born in a very big, what became a farmhouse in northern Italy, and to be precise, about 20 kilometers due north of this town of Venice. So very close to the Venice lagoon. I was surrounded by rivers, hence my instant affection for Mildura, because like my village, it has a river. And this is a mighty big river. We were subsistence farmers. Now, that's a very funny notion that a lot of people kind of can't get their head around it. But put it this way, my father had 6 kids. He had no more than perhaps 20 acres.
Okay.
But on those 20 acres, we grew absolutely everything. I can go into the details if you want to know. Enough for us to sustain a kind of a level of life just above poverty,
Wow.
but rich nonetheless. I'm very proud of my background. No running water, no toilets, just a whopper big farmhouse, which had been, in its more glorious days, a bishop's residence. Then it was acquired by the local landlord, for whom my ancestors worked, in that he owned everything, and people work for him. And then after the Second World War, when the government of Italy, the new republic, decided to do a bit of justice to the peasants, people were able to buy for relatively little money the properties they'd been working on. This is a very rough approximation.
Yeah.
So my father, after the war, stopped being a share farmer, if you like, and acquired his own property. My father and my mother, they're always a couple. They lived together 60 plus years with 6 kids. Now, so that's the setting. There's this big, huge house which used to belong to a bishop, which was then used to house 3 sets of families that were related. They're all the Pieris, so my father's and 2 of his cousins, with other children and grandmothers and all that. In all, there were one day I counted 36
Are you joking?
of us living in this, I've got a photo of it, in this massive thing, which is incidentally was recently, let's say 20 years ago, purchased by a local businessman and returned to its former glory. And I must say, it's just an absolutely gorgeous place, and they've thrown millions at it, and it looks the part. But when we lived there, we had 3 kitchens, so because there were three families, if you like, with all their offsprings, and we had 3 stables. They're also attached to the house. We lived intimately with the animals. Now, you look at me now and you say, no, you're telling fibs. That's not possible. To contextualize this for people to understand, my father was born 1903, right? And my mother 1909.
Yeah.
I'm the last of those 6 kids. When my parents were already old, my mother was 46. By then, a child in 3 was a Down syndrome. So I don't know whether to consider myself lucky or what, but that was really a risky venture to have a child in 1955 at that age.
Yeah.
But as it is, I pulled through with forceps, apparently. My mother said, you're always angry because you came out with forceps. And possibly it's true. And So my parents never progressed. Once they were farmers, they remained farmers. My father did everything by hand and ran a truly organic farm.
Wow.
Again, very hard to believe, very hard to understand. The world was evolving, 1963, 150 kilometers from us in Cortina, 007 is being filmed, one of the first one on the skis,
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And the airplanes were flying over our house, going to many destinations, as they do. But nothing on the ground changed for my parents. They stayed true to what they always did and knew nothing else. My father didn't have a driver's license. My father didn't even have a Vespa. My father conducted all this business on the farm with the cows that pulled the plow. He only subcontracted big plowing necessities with a neighbor, also a relation of ours, who was a wealthy farmer, and he'd come around and plow, and he plowed, my father paid him, and with, sometimes with a few bottles of wine. We did a lot by barter. So we grew wheat, for example. Yeah. The wheat was thrashed by the neighbor who had all the equipment. The wheat went to the mill. The mill kept some flour for himself to pay himself.
Yep.
He gave some of the flour to the baker who made our bread, but he also kept flour to make bread for other people. So out of that paddock of wheat, the miller got his cut, not the Milner, the miller. The Milner makes sense. The miller had his cut, the baker had his cut, and we got our bread.
That's amazing.
No money was transacted, ever.
What a different world it was back then.
Yeah, and it is hard to make. Also, my friends and contemporaries say, you're telling fibs, you're telling romantic stories. No, it's not. My brothers and neighbors can corroborate this. This was true. By 1963 in Italy, I was 8 years old. There was an industrial revolution. It just took like a mushrooms overnight. It grew beyond belief. And sure enough, next to us, somebody sold their land to a manufacturer of bricks. So the world around me changed in 1963 from this romantic landscape, all homegrown stuff, all done with cow manure, all done, with virtually an absence of machinery. And then all of a sudden, this monster, this giant factory begins. And that is fueling also the economic development of the northeast of Italy. So all those peasants who lived communally in these big houses, they begin to get jobs and they begin to split. And they need a house here and a house there and a house everywhere. And so that houses sprouted up pretty much without much regulation. It's a disaster for agriculture, just a shocking disaster. And also the peasants also sold their land, their beautiful arable land, for the clay underneath to go to the brick factory. So before you knew, we had dozens and dozens of old Dodge trucks left over from the Second World War, run by young bucks from a particular part of Italy, driving back and forth, supplying this factory 24/7 with bricks, with material, with clay that was used to make these bricks and tiles and you name it. And smoke was pouring out because they were cooking it with diesel.
Yeah.
There's no solar power, no other fuel, no gas. They just use diesel 24/7, and that polluted our property next door. So we had to move. By 1966, we had to move, and we went to another location where my father had another handful of acres. Right. So that's the background. Now, in that context, I will never forget the owner of the factory, or the principal character there, turning up in his red Mercedes and gave my dad $1,000 for the damage. $1,000 for the destruction of what had been a way of life. And that's why when people talk about economic development, I'm a counselor for economic development, I'm so conflicted because, I know what the cost of it, of economic development is. If you do not regulate it, if you don't do it thoughtfully and gradually and properly, which is why probably I'm now in what you call politics, which is not really politics. It's just trying to introduce some common sense and develop a community that's more thoughtful rather than one just devoted to the wholesale destruction of the environment, as I witnessed as a child. Now, if you go back to that house, that farmhouse, my brother, number one, was born in 1932. Right. So as we speak, he's just 90. And he will be here next week.
All right.
Oh, wow.
And we will celebrate his 90th next door at Gradi's because they got the space and I don't want to cook for my brother's birthday. I'd rather subcontract Michael and his crew. And
yeah, we're both good friends of Michael.
Yeah,
Michael,
let the booze flow and have a real celebration. Now,
no pressure, Michael.
now, my brother, Sergio, at the 1932 born, around 10 years old, declares in this farmhouse, in the condition that I've just described, that he wants to be a musician. Blimey, how can my parents respond to a child who wants to be a musician? Now, most people would have said, get off your ass and go and, go out in the paddock and do some pruning or some digging because what do you want to be a musician for? But somehow my father and mother went to his older brother, right? This story is worth listening because it has a proper segue. Who was a priest. And so we go back to the 19th century when some of these characters were born. So my father's father had about 8 kids. Yep. And the firstborn, Giuseppe, was destined for the priesthood because if family had lots of kids and they needed to survive, they always send them either to the nunnery or to the priesthood because if you have a priest in the family, you have a little bit of influence, a little bit of access to something, or a little bit of prestige, call it what you like. But that was the tradition. That went back 2,000 years since the beginning of Christendom. I mean, people always had the ambition to have someone, closer to God in the family, a mediator. And anyway, Uncle Giuseppe was a bit of a patriarchal type. Of course, everyone deferred to him. My father said, what do I do with this kid? And he said, here's a fistful of dollars. Go to the local 2 ladies, unmarried, prim and proper, middle class. They've got a piano. They teach music. See if he's got any aptitude for any. And they did. And the kid turned out to have a natural talent. And so then at that point, they had to procure a piano. So Uncle the priest found an old bomb somewhere, and it was placed right in the middle of the first floor of this farmhouse I described before, which had a hall and had 4 adjacent bedrooms, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep. Hall in the middle. So they plunked the piano there, and this kid begins to practice and study right through winter, summer, cold nights. I don't even know how he kept himself warm. And all the peasants are all sleeping, and he's practicing until 2 or 3 in the morning. It's a very romantic story. Occasionally, you hear someone say, play that one again. Play the one you played last night. You know. So they all endured, imagine, listening, scales and this. But that was the sense of community that was generated inside that house and that property.
Well, and a credit to your parents because you've got such a diverse range already. So a pianist, a chef, a priest.
Well, that was the uncle, right?
Yeah.
So, So my brother, for instance, would have to buy some music books. So he'd grow some strawberries and sell them at the market, like, the farmer's market, or grow some asparagus and pick them early in the morning and then bundle them up with we didn't have string.
Yeah, of course.
So you just cut the branches of mulberries, our mulberries in the north of Italy, which are used to feed, silkworms, right?
Okay.
So you cut them down, you pull the bark off, and it's very flexible, and you can tie up your bundle of asparagus, so it's totally organic. Off you go to the market on your bike, you sell the asparagus, you make the money, you go to the music shop, you buy the music. So that's how he got along in life. Until he graduated and did all sorts of things. But in 1960, by the time he was a mature musician, there was no work. There were no opportunities for people of our ilk. Unless you were friendly with a good politician or you had influence, well, now, you wouldn't get a job in a conservatorium or anything of that kind. So he said, I'm a concert organist. By then he became an organist. He switched from piano to organ at some point. So what the hell am I going to do? And he looked at Canada, where one of our brothers had already migrated. And Canada wouldn't take people. The United States wouldn't take people. Australia would take people, only as farmers.
Is that right?
So, well, he said, I grew up on a farm. I've got the pedigree. I know everything about farming. Not that he ever did very much, because if you want to protect your hands when you're a musician. Yeah. And so he got a sponsorship by Mr. Zanata in Stanthorpe in Queensland to go and pick apples.
Really?
Yeah. So he got on a boat like everybody else, like thousands of people who've come to Mildura, Australia in general, and went to Brisbane. And on the first night, he saw a concert being advertised. He saw a sandwich board, and the name was John Curo. And Curo is an Italian surname, so I think he went in and somehow introduced himself. I'll ask him all these details next week. And John said, what? A musician from Italy? An organist? Said, you're not going to pick apples with Mr. Zanata. You stay here with me, and we play music, and we'll have fun. See, John was the son of a doctor, so I think they had a little bit of, means. Now, fast forward, John Curo became the conductor for the Queensland Symphony Orchestra.
That's amazing.
His three kids are all in a Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. In fact, we will have Monica and Sarah both on the front row of violins. They'll be here for Sergio's birthday. And one son, I think, is a cello player. Anyway, they're all musos. So that was the relationship that formed in Brisbane with John until the director of music at St. Patrick Cathedral in Melbourne, pretty powerful figures, again, I don't remember his name, Archbishop Mannix was still alive. He heard that a young organist from Italy had come to Australia, and they tracked him down. And they said, we need an organist at St. Pat's in Melbourne. So down he went on the train, I think from Brisbane he went to Melbourne. The Melbourne church gave him a little house in Drummond Street, in the heart of what became Bohemian Carlton.
Yep.
He was playing for the church to get a bit of dough. The church also allowed him to use another church in Rathdown Street called St. George, and so he could do private lessons there. But he quickly made a big name for himself. In fact, we will be showing here at Gradi, because they've got the big projector thing there. Yeah. My son has tracked down an ABC television recording from 1961 where he's playing live from a church in St. Kilda. It's a beauty. You see this beautiful young man, because he was good looking, and he's sort of sitting at the organ, And he turns to the camera and he says, and now I shall play, blah, blah, blah. Organizes his music and then he plays. Now, television, you don't do that anymore. You know, bang, bang, bang. Then you got the time to spread out the music, pull the stops, reposition yourself and play. You will see it if you come.
It's incredible.
It'll be incredible. An incredible document. The whole 30 minutes live broadcast on the ABC in Australia. Imagine my parents who are still living in that house, still with no running water, no showers, no toilets, and their son is in Australia on TV. But they had no idea. My parents, no comprehension, nor would they aspire to. They never went anywhere. They always stayed on the farm, and then when we moved to the other little bit of land, my father built a scungy little house just to survive. So that's the established the contact with Australia with me and my family goes back to 1960s when Sergio came and went to Melbourne. And it was an instant success. I've got here some copies of The Age music critic saying things like, you know, his was the glory. They regarded him. Until in 1971, he came back to Italy for a third visit. And I said, I was young. I had not taken to wine school at all. I was an outright flop. That's one day I wish I never got out of bed when I decided to go to wine school. It just did not agree with me, and I became really a dropout. Much to the disappointment, you can imagine the pain of my parents. I had been a model student all up to that point. But that wine school just did not click with me. And I'm being criticized and I'm a dropout. I probably spend more time in the pub than I did. Just stop going to school. My parents didn't even know for 6 months that I was back in school. I would catch the bus in the morning, go to the station, catch the train, go to the school 30 kilometers away, stay there until 5 or 6 o'clock, meandering around the town of Conegliano, doing absolutely sweet FA. I don't know, and feeling absolutely anxious and full of shame, and I can't begin to tell you how lonely and how horrible it is when you know you're a failure and you can't help yourself. That's
How old were you at that point, Steph?
16.
16, yeah.
Yeah, but about 16, 71, yeah. And I feel that other brothers of mine are judgmental, and then this other dude comes from Australia. I say, oh, fuck, another ball breaker coming on to tell me how to suck eggs. You know, I can't even stand it. I think I avoided him for about a day or so. Finally, we sat down and he said, well, what's up with you? And I said, look, I've fucked up. I can't stand school. I can't do it. Long and the short, he said, go to Australia. He said, get away from here. And I couldn't believe listen, let's have a glass of wine. We made our own. Dad still made our own. There was always a jug of wine on the table. And with a little doily on top, you know, to stop the flies. And he said, let's have a wine. And we drank the whole jug. He said, go get another one, and then another one, and then another one, because it was only 9.5% alcohol, you know. So. And I just said, oh, my God, the world is just finally someone who is not an authoritarian ball breaker, judgmental, telling me how bad I am. I know I'm bad. You don't need to tell me. I know that I've stuffed up, and there were reasons for that, which took me years to figure out. At any rate, I finally found a bloke who was a brother and a father and a friend. Couldn't have worked out better. Simultaneously, a family of Aussies, husband and wife, and 4 little girls, turn up and they said, they said, can you help us find a house? We want to stay for a year here so the girls can learn Italian, because the father spoke Italian fluently. He had been in the choir at St. Pat's. You know
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
Sergio was organist at St. Pat, and Bill was in the choir. So they had become friends. So Sergio didn't even know that Bill was going to Italy with Lorna and all the little kids. And so it was a bit of a surprise for everyone. So we had this charming Australian family with 4 little girls. Then we procured them a rental property from a cousin of ours. And the friendship developed. They used to come every night and get the milk, the wine, It was just lovely. And it kept a lot of company for my parents. My parents love the kids. And they said, oh, Stefano wants to come to Australia. Well, we'll look after him when he comes to Australia. What do I know what that means? I have no freaking idea. I had to, first of all, turn 18 to apply, which I did. I went to Milan. They checked my teeth, looked at my lungs. They said, yeah, teeth are good, lungs are good. Off you go.
The health check.
Approve. Yeah, teeth was very important. If I had rotten teeth, you wouldn't pass.
Really?
Yeah. They've always protected the dental health of, because there were so many people here with rotten teeth, you see. It's a big...
All those 10-pound poms.
Yeah, they clean up. Anyway, I came through. So I came on a $20 passage with $50 in my pocket, which in 1974 was the wage on the assembly line of Ford. It was $45 in 1974. That's why they had a massive strike in 73. They nearly destroyed the factory in Broadmeadows because the wage wasn't good enough. And sure enough, I went to this family. I said, well, I go and buy Il Globo tomorrow, and I start looking for jobs. And Bill said, no, you're not going to look for jobs. You're going to go back to school. He said, that's the promise we made your parents. Oh, I said, Jesus, school? Where do I don't even speak English? He said, never mind, we got a specific school for dropouts in Brunswick called Sydney Rock Community School. All the kids that don't want to go to school, they're all disasters. They got there, and we look after them. And in fact, you will help me to teach a bunch of them Italian, because they got to take Italian to the HSC then, obviously, HSC. And said, you'll get $20 a week to help me, and then you'll get other little odd jobs. But you don't have to worry about lodging. We got your room. You don't have to worry about food or pocket money. It's all covered. Why? Because Bill and a bunch of others had decided to form, this is crazy stuff. This is utopia. Think how lucky I am. I land in a country, no English, not knowing where I'm going, and these people already sorted it all out because they had formed a union where everyone put whatever they earned into the same bank account every week. So the pie grew very quickly. You just imagine if all of us put what we earn into the same bank account, and they were all teachers and professionals and so on. And then every week there was a meeting, and the necessities were sorted out. I need a fridge. Oh, I've got a spare one. Here it is. Washing machine. Yeah, I've got, yep, blah, blah. Oh, well, we need to buy a new one. Yep, approved. Go buy a new one. And so on and so forth. And
that's incredible.
Yeah. So I was taking care of everything. But there's more, as the cliche. They were no ordinary people. One in that bunch, one was Max Gillies. You know the actor Max Gillies?
Yeah.
He did all the imitations and so he and I were the two single men in the group. And so Max and I used to do the shopping at the Victoria Market on Thursday morning for the whole communal thing. And so there was a group. Now Bill and Lorna were involved with a theatre group called the Pram Factory in Carlton, which is where all the actors, the whole film industry came out of there. You know, Stork. Yeah. Then I went to live with Stork. Yeah, with Bruce.
Oh, really?
Bruce Pence. Yeah. Because then the girls started to, get a bit older. And Bruce one day, Bruce and his wife and another mob, they did another group similar to that, exactly the same. And he said, move over with us because I've got more room. I have no kids. So I went to live with Bruce and his wife, Jenny, quite right next to Sydney Rock Community School, coincidentally. So I could commute, to school on foot, back and forth. It's fantastic days. young and skinny and
This is incredible.
fucking Italian, and Carlton was Carlton North Mount. It was just like being in paradise. There was the Gough Whitlam years. They were eventful years. Lots of stuff was happening. Lots of cultural stuff. Like Gough was buying blue poles, and people were getting shitty. I spent $1 million on a squiggle. Did you see the paper yesterday? $508 million. And so in Australia, there's always been a tension between modernist thinkers, progressive, and those who want to hold it back. If you just let it go, this country will be the richest and it's already the best country in the world in many ways, but it could be much more exciting. Go back to Carlton, mid-60s. Sergio had a little house in Drummond Street, and he was taking in tenants to make ends meet. And two of his tenants were, one in particular, the husband, was writing the script for the TV show, A Country Practice. And then Sergio was the godfather of their first daughter, who then, by freaking amazing coincidence, becomes the partner of Max Allen, the renowned wine critic, who is currently, as we speak, writing a book entitled How the City of Mildura Changed the Way We Drink in Australia.
Wow.
Oh, right.
Yeah, look at the circle. His father-in-law is with my brother writing A Country Practice, which goes to TV and becomes hugely successful, right?
Massive.
He marries my brother's goddaughter and then ends up being involved in the Australian Alternative Varieties Wine Show in Mildura, which I established with Bruce Chalmers and Rod Bonfiglioli, and ends up writing a book about how this town has been so influential in determining the way that people drink. This is the bloke who failed miserably at wine school in Italy, hated wine school, hated chemistry, mathematics, algebra. My brain is not made for that. My brain is for tasting wine, understanding how it goes with food. Well, you learn that. Now, I wouldn't give a toss about the chemistry. It just doesn't agree with me. Food, chemistry, fuck off. I don't want to know about it. Look at this circuitous thing. Somebody was an abject matter. And you know what's funny about it? Some of the kids who went through the wine school, it was very prestigious. You could only get in if you had good marks from your previous compulsory schooling years. Some of them would be brilliant students, they're selling freaking corks or chemicals for the wine industry. I said, what have you done? I've been a wine rep for this chemical company for 30 years. I'm about to take my pension at 55, 60. I haven't even considered pension, and I'm 68 next month. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The life has just been an amazing, amazing, amazing journey.
It's so ironic because we were actually talking last night how you're probably the best person we've ever met for pairing wine with food. And you have your own wine label too.
Yeah,
What an
as they
incredible
say,
story.
if only Mum could see where I am now.
Yeah.
But I guess that I've been trying all my life to make up for those lost 2 years in a spiritual desert.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always try. And, it's never when you have to fill that, it's a gap you never fill. It's a damn bloody curse. You never fill it. You never feel you justify your existence. You never feel you've done enough.
So you'd say that's what drives you in life now is...
Possibly still, I don't, but there's the necessity. Then you have children, you've got to feed them and give them a life, and so all the other things, But ultimately, underneath, I think that sometimes failure is a very good experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you fail so much, then you suicide, like, what's his name? The Gary's here.
Yeah.
He wrote a book on the successes of failure, but then he stuck his head in the oven and he gassed himself.
Yeah. Crazy. All right, Steph, tell us a bit more then. So where did your love of food So obviously from the farm, but
So
then
that's
how'd you get into the food
the whole
industry?
background. Well, it's another set of wonderful stories. During the schooling years, I had a job with an Italian newspapers. That community dissolved. By the way, there was a third one formed, which was led by a Mildura guy, Philip Noyes. Do you know the Noyes family?
Yeah.
Philip Noyes was in with us. He was a great leader. He died, unfortunately, here on the tennis court here at age 50 of a heart attack. He and I were, he's the second person, the second Australian I met soon after arriving. And we were friends ever since. He used to play the guitar. He was a handsome, tall, beautiful boy. And, the girls, all of that. Those were the days. And it was marvelous. That's just another coincidence. So I had a job. And one day, with another bunch of desperados, we said, we got to do something with our lives now. And we noticed a fellow called Jim Asker noticed an ad in the paper. He said, Minister Brian Dixon, Life being it, Minister for Employment, is supporting cooperatives for the purpose of job creation, right? Apply here. So we were crazy enough to apply to form a cooperative to go and buy a restaurant.
Wow.
We got, in 1980, we got 50 grand, no strings attached. That's a shitload of money. 4 or 5 of us to go and set up a restaurant, which we did in Brunswick, in Lygon Street. It was called Osteria, and it was the first wood fire oven ever. And people had never seen real Italian country food, polenta, risotto, all the things we now take for granted, fried, because Lygon Street was always just fried calamari and parmigiana and stinky spaghetti oil, fucking shit. So we started doing things, and we were all novices. We had no idea. The first meal I ever served was to serve rigatoni with beautiful ragu, chunky meat ragu, and I left the ladle in the pot with the ragu. So I've got the chinois. I drop the pasta in, take it out, I put it in the pan, and then I grab the ladle to put the sauce and then toss it, and the handle was incandescent hot, and it stuck to my hand. Oh. And that was my first dish.
Joking.
My first dish, my first commercial output. I burned my hand like Magriana's screen. But I carried on because the restaurant was full of people. You had to keep going, and they were all eager to see what we were doing. It was our first night. Everybody's coming along. They've heard of this bunch of desperados who got a free golf from the government to set up a restaurant. And that became another beautiful cultural space because it became a gathering restaurant for conversations, we had a spare room upstairs. There were poetry readings and stuff was going on. There was a lot of energy, in those days, lots of conversation, booze, girls, a lot, but not drugs. That's one thing we never did.
Yeah.
We might have been crazy in many ways, but we never, you went down the road in Carlton and there were junkies and stuff, but we never did any of that. We had pure fun, I must say. And so that's where I started a little bit with food. Then one day, I realized I'm alone in the kitchen. And where are all the other members of the co-op? Watching the footy. And we got a restaurant full of people tonight. And I'm doing the prep and they're watching the footy. And I said, hey guys, this doesn't work. I said, hang on a sec. This is all very good and proper, but I'm the one doing the work. And you guys are all having a good time. So that was perhaps, the culmination of a time that they got a little disengaged. The excitement was over. Now the hard work begins. I befriended a guy in Kensington, the late Raymond Fennick, who couldn't believe. He said, what, you guys have a restaurant for nothing, and I've worked my ass off with a tiny little restaurant, and, I've got a hat for the age good food guide, and here you are coming in, just jolly-go-lucky, you know. When I went to work for him because I wanted to know how a restaurant really works. I went with him. I did it several months. One Saturday morning, I was involved in a car accident. Somebody hit me, and I was kaputski. I had broken ribs. I had a splenectomy. Just, you know, I was in the shock. So I was convalescing at the house of one of my fellow apprentices because his parents were very nice, and they said, "Oh, you're alone, you know, we'll look after you, you're all broken up." And I also was a bit sweet with his sister. So her father one day came to me and he said, "Listen, Michael, you know, his son, he's very good at cooking, riding a motorcycle, climbing trees." He said, "But you, why the hell do you want to go into food?" He said, "Finish uni," because I had started university. Finish, you have 1 unit to go, and get a decent job in the public service. I said, that sounds like a plan. You know, sweating in a kitchen from 8 in the morning until midnight, because that's how it used to be. These people have no idea what it was really like. So I went back to Raymond. I said, "Raymond, look, I'll give you 3 months to go over the Christmas holiday period, and I'm off." Went to a friend of mine in the public service, in fact, in the ministerial office, and his name is Dimitri Dolis. And I said, "Dimi, I want to be a cook. Have you got a job for me?" And he said, "Well, if you have to finish uni if you want to get into public service, same thing." You know. I said, "I know. It starts in March, but between now and the end of the year, I need a job." So he gave me a project which was really big, and I did it with pretty well, even though I say so myself. At the end of which, I got the job in the public service. Lasted 2 weeks. I went back upstairs and said, "I'm going to die there. I don't want to. You know, the money is good, but what the hell? That's not me." He said, "Don't worry. I'll second you out of there into the minister's office, and you work with me, and you run around for me." So that's how I got into the political side rather than the public service. So that's how I became a ministerial advisor myself in the Ethnic Affairs Ministry and a little bit in the arts, and served several ministers and I was preparing myself to enter Parliament. Everything was lined up to enter Parliament. Unfortunately, factional deals did all the sensible people out of the deal. 7 of us, we all got screwed. And at that point, the Don, because by then I had married his daughter, he said, "Well, that didn't go too well. I just bought the Grand Hotel. I need help. You like food and wine. Why don't you two come and give me a hand?" I had already been to Mildura to introduce myself to the parents, you know, that sort. And I was struck. This town is just far out. I said, climate, fantastic. Bit hot for me, but river fish, same, like plus oranges and the whole citrus thing, and grapes and wine and this, and the sky's the limit here. I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll come. What do we do?" So I quit the public service. Sold a house in Brunswick. That was a big mistake. It was a modest little house, but still, you know, being a million now. And we established the bottle shop first upstairs where the pizza is. Don was digging out this place because he had to take this much out to make it high enough for humans. Before they used to have people crawling with kegs. This is a keg room. Like it's beyond that is a whole keg room, the whole distance. And the other room where you sit is for all the beer that used to be sold upstairs.
You're serious?
Do you know that this pub had a monopoly on the sale of beer, of liquor, until 1988? This was the Coffee Palace until 1919. Then they applied for a liquor license. And they got it because by then the workers had got one for internal consumption. The settlers got one first for internal consumption only. And these dudes here, the public company here, still dominated by Chafee, said, "Well, if we're going to join the fray," this will be revealed, I suppose, in the history of Mildura that will be published in the next few years. The precise details. You know, this is just a kind of an impressionistic account. They must have said, "Well, if we got to join the crew, we may as well give ourselves a license for takeaway." And they held that license for takeaway under the Act of Parliament, which makes Mildura 100 years from 1888, under the Chaffee arrangement, the indenture, whatever it was called. And until 1988, this from the 20s, this was the only place where you can buy booze to take away.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Why do you think there were all these underground halls here under Mario's on the other side? It was all to chill beer. It came on the train. Long necks, kegs, whatever. They had to bring them here and chill them down as quickly as possible and then move them on. So they bought also the cinema next door for storage. The Grand Hotel was rich. They were making money like you can't believe. This was a money printing operation. It was the most modern motel style in the 60s. They had money to burn because of alcohol. But by the time Don bought it from the receivers, that had gone, that monopoly. So he had to start all over again. And I said, you know what? Yes, this will always be a beer drinking country, but people are going to wine.
Yeah.
And the Chardonnay boom had just started. And people were switching here from Sultanas to Chardonnay. Now they've gone from Chardonnay to table grapes because they follow, whatever is the trend of the moment. But I said people will drink more wine than ever before. And I said, and I bet you that smoking in restaurants will never happen again. It's true. John Thwaites, Minister for Health, said, Steph, what do you think? I said, kill it. Do it. Hotel Association will scream. Everybody will scream. You can't have smoking in a bloody restaurant. Kill it. And he killed it. And he and I launched the legislation in St Kilda. There was, we were screaming. Nah, kill it. And we did. You can still smoke outside, but not now. You've got to move across the road. And that's the best thing that ever happened. That and the liberalisation of liquor licenses in Victoria. John Kerner, she's dead now, unfortunately, called me in one day and she said, I hear you are the one who loves wine and food. Listen to this guy. Shut up. Listen to him. So this guy comes in. They introduced Professor Neuenhausen. He's still alive. I spoke to him not long ago. And he said, he presented a report where he suggested that liquor licensing should be made easy for everyone. As it is in Victoria, $500 and you buy a liquor license, no big deal. He left and she turned to me and she said, what do you think? I said, Mrs. Premier, I said, if you go with that recommendation, Melbourne will become the most attractive tourist, blah, blah, destination in Australia. Food and wine will boom here. No more surreptitious drinking from a cheap mug, some nasty plonk, the cop's going to come, Yeah, crazy. And obviously she took it to cabinet. It was a cabinet decision then. Obviously it was not me. But she said, all right, you can go now. And I remember it was a very hot day. Her office is in Spring Street. And I went out the back. It was hot. My office was in Victoria Parade. And I went through the courtyard of St. Pat's. And it was open. And it was cool inside. And I went there to think, I wonder if, I didn't go to pray. But I said, I wonder if she will actually do something about this. And I reflected in the church to cool my heels a bit. And then I went back to the office. I'll never forget that day. And it was really a revolutionary. But what I learned there, working in the ministerial offices and all that sort of stuff, was how the media works.
Yeah.
You got to tell a story. You can't just say, I've got the product. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
You got to. Sometimes you do extremely well, even if your product is RS. You know what I mean? It's a story. And what struck me about Mildura when I came was the history of this place, the history of Mildura, the river, paddle steamers. Before that, the whole Aboriginal thing. I said, this place is just bloody chock-a-block full of stuff. More stuff you can possibly imagine. You can't make it up.
Yeah.
It is still the last surviving utopia in the world. It is people came here and formed a city with a discussion around the table and a few dollars under the. I bet there was a lot of shenanigans going on, to corrupt somebody because it wasn't easy, and you can't find a more incredibly appealing, crazy place like this, full of potential. We should be having here. We should have 5-star hotels. We don't. We should have more restaurants.
Yep.
We should be. You can't still these days. This is my criticism here. We can't still buy freshly squeezed orange juice in the citrus capital of Australia, if not the world. You can't.
It's nuts, isn't it?
Crazy.
No. It's like we're walking around like zombies. Zombies. Now we have an olive oil industry. When I came here, there wasn't any. I went around everywhere looking if somebody was pressing olive oil. A friend of mine who had been in that restaurant in Carlton, and he was an industrial chemist, a bit crazy. He had a bit of money, a bit of inheritance. He bought a mobile olive oil pressing machine. He's in Gondola on the Murray. I put Gianni, and he came here and we made oil. And all the Calabrese said, "That's not oil. You're picking green olives." I said, "That's how olive oil is made. So if you want the best quality oil, it's got to be green." "Oh, but there's no yield." Yeah, who gives a damn? So we've been technologically behind producing amazing food, but not good at presenting it and value adding. And we put it on the truck and send it to Melbourne. But everybody should be making a carrot cake here called La Mattina carrot cake.
Oh, yeah.
You should be making the orange cake called the Keenan's orange cake. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Should be making whatever, name it after the identities of the people of this area. And I came here, I was pretty sort of insulting because I used to say these things publicly and people don't like it. I had no idea about how to go about being a bit modest. But I was so frustrating to see this miraculous place. There's nothing. And still nowadays you have to pinch yourself and say, is this real? Imagine what you could do with a few ideas and a bit of investment and so on. So I was so excited, I started writing a memoir, kind of. I didn't have a name for it. But Donna said, you're thinking about the farmhouse, Italy, the produce there, which I haven't even talked to you about. And she said, well, you are from a part, this via Venice, the gondola. She said, it's a gondola on the Murray. When she said that, when my wife said that, fuck, that is it. I could grasp a concept that would make sense outside of Mildura for the media. It's a marvelous story how an idea can just generate. We started a spaghetti bar down here and then a bit more and a bit more. Maggie Beer came along.
Yep.
I said, Maggie, you're connected. You've been published. Have a look at my manuscript here. She sent it off to a friend of hers, Julie Gibbs. She wrote back. She said, it's a very good thing, but Stefano is not known by anybody, so I can't publish him. Maggie wrote the letter back, sent the letter back to me and said, she wrote on the bottom, I thought you were famous already. I had that frame. Everyone on table 14 can read it. But Julie Gibbs came a few months ago to interview me for the Power Museum in Sydney. They are collecting the lives and records of all the cooks from 1975, something like that, onward. And so I gave back her letter. I said, take that to the museum. We laughed so much. She said, did I write that? Yes, I said, you did. But then once I got that, I said, oh, fuck this. I can't. What am I going to do? I mean, I forgot the project altogether. But here comes luck in many forms. This little twerp of a guy turns up one day. He's swearing like a trooper. He's short, his eyes are so devilish, he's got a little white beard. He's looked like a caricature. And he says to me, he's in the other room, and he says, what the F do you do here? I said, what do you think? Food and a bit of... He said, I have been employed by Kendall Airlines to put bums on seat. Well, what the fucking way I put on bums on seat? What for? People, I can't say I go to Mildura to eat an orange. I said, well, we got golf courses, we got houseboats. No, not good enough. He said, give me $100 a week and I promote you. I went to the Don. I said, listen, this guy works for Kendall. He wants to do on the side a little promotion for us for $100 a week. Well, Don said, no harm in trying. Try 3 months, see what happens. Lo and behold, this guy brought everybody who was anybody. He was so connected, gourmet traveler, more importantly, the age. He brought here Claude Forel, who used to write the food column. He was scary. When Claude entered a restaurant, people freaked, him and his offsider. He brought Gourmet Traveller. And Claude Forel wrote a big page on the Age when he was a broadsheet. He said, Country Delights from Mildura, something or other. Everything at once. At once. The aeroplane, the day after, Anthony's family came with their own plane from New Zealand. Anthony used to be Deputy Prime Minister. Anthony, all that family. They're pretty illustrious National Party people. Bingo. They all came here. They said, we're so happy, because they're Italian too, by ancestry. So we're so happy that somebody in the country has made to a full page in the Age. True story. And then I said to myself, ooh, now this changes the narrative. Julie wanted me to be famous. Now I'm becoming famous. So I said, I can't represent the manuscript to her. That would be a waste of time. I sent it to my daughter's godfather, who at the time was living in Sydney. And I remember, I said, shit, Dougal had been in publishing in a previous life. He's famous amongst our bunch of friends for being direct and honest, though he goes a bit, but he always tells you as it is. And I said, listen, now, is there any value, any merit in this manuscript? Yes or no? Apply your direct, critical, don't hold back type of criteria and get back to me. He didn't. So I said, better carry on and do what we do. And he rings me up one day and he said, look, I took the liberty of giving the manuscript to a bloke in the ABC that I know, Terry Maloney, who runs all the ABC shops for all of Australia. He's the number 2 in command there. And he likes it. He wants to come and visit you. He drove himself with his wife and Dougal from Sydney, came here, looked around, stayed with us 3 days, we ate, we drank, and he said, I'll publish you. Rings me a couple of months later, he says, no, a couple of weeks later, he said, yeah, I'll publish you, I promise, I'll keep my promise, you keep working on the manuscript. But unless we make you famous, how are we going to sell the book? He said, I'll send a camera crew and see if we can do something with TV. Jesus, I'm shitting myself. And here they come, camera crew, all very nice people. They say, talk about this, blah, blah, blah. Yep, that'll do. Well, you will do. They went away and they said, yep, he will do. We like what we see. Condor on the Murray was born.
Was on the Murray.
Nobody had ever seen their own backyard on television.
Yeah.
No, Australians said, wow, this is what happens in our regional area. It was romanticized. It was bullshit galore. You know, I don't go around on a bike picking eggs here and there. I mean, I do in the car, a small one. But, but it's all true. The fisherman was a true fisherman. That lady made the eggs. The one made the pasta by hand. That one baked the bread. And the citrus is grown and the wine is made. It was a matter of putting a story around it. And that just went off the chart. It was sold to 60 countries, but I signed a deal that said if we flop, we cop it. If we are successful, the taxpayers make the money because it goes back to, and you become famous. But you shall get nothing other than the royalties of the book. So we sold a lot of books, and I did get, and I had the restaurant full forever. So I got my rewards, but if you think that there was no, if I had a percentage, if I insisted, say, no, just in case you are successful, give me 5%, conditional. If only I had been smart to put that in.
Yeah.
I would be Ray Pratt.
Nick Forkett, I'd say. Amazing story. And some of the names you just mentioned are some incredible names. But what would you say are career highlights? And also talk to about some of the the highlights in people you've met too?
Career highlight, well, was the night that Ugondola Mari went on TV.
Yeah.
So I turned to my brother and I said, I've trumped you now. You appeared once or twice. Now I have 7 episodes, so we had a laugh. And then there was another 7 or 5, whatever. And that was a very exciting moment. You had to pinch yourself.
Imagine your parents.
No, my parents did.
If they knew the success that both brothers had.
They didn't know. They were in Italy.
Comprehend.
They sort of, I think my mother saw it on an Italian private channel called Red Prawn, Gambero Rosso. She said, "Oh, is that my son? Oh, he's put on weight." I put on a lot of weight. The downside of all of that was all that success. I was working around the clock, white bread, bacon sandwiches, cafe latte all day, and you just tension, eating, tasting. You're insecure all the time. Is this good? Can I present this? No, do it again. And, it's terrible. And one other night in Melbourne, I can't remember if it was 2002, but I got Chef of the Year, Restaurant of the Year, 3 hats, Country Restaurant of the Year. I mean, I went up on stage 4 times. People were getting a bit bored. What is this? Has he bought the bloody newspaper? But with that came such responsibility, and my life changed. And I think it took a lot of enthusiasm even out, because you have to do it every day. And the expectations, you got to live up to all that fanfare. And, it's not. It's just, you come here, have a bowl of gnocchi. It never wanted to be, fine dining. And people say, we come to a degustation. Stop. Degustation is a kind of a French concept. No, you come here for dinner. It's not come here degustating it's a pop-up. There's no kitchen here. You can't have a kitchen in this place. It's just a 6-burner stove and a combi oven. We didn't even have a combi oven in the days before. We used to run upstairs and bring trays of food down from the main kitchen, run them up and down, to convince the Don to spend a few bob on a combi oven. He said, if you're any good, you make it happen. Yeah, magic. So that was that. I suppose that the day I would get out of bed was when we had old Mildura well-to-do with a man called Len Evans, who was a huge authority in wine, huge. And of course, they're having red wine, and they're all sort of dressed up to the hill there. Just super happy to have Len Evans, who was such a great and influential man. And so the function is upstairs and the kitchen is downstairs. This is running by itself for that night, so I've got some other dudes upstairs helping. And we had to do eye fillet and some mushroom sauce to go on top. So I got the most expensive Italian mushrooms, reconstituted them, blah, blah, blah. I go upstairs to serve the entree. I come downstairs, and the frigging cooks, they cook the eye fillet to well done. Now, you're vegetarian, so this doesn't interest you. But to well done grey, and he has 2-3 pans, and he's cooked the mushroom to a cinder. They went black. All they had to do was a little bit of butter, parsley. I just said, you don't just warm them up. I ended up serving 200 people with grey eye fillet, mushroom almost as black as this microphone, and I was serving and I was crying. And then you get out there because they would say, "Oh, the dinner was cooked by Stefano," and you got to go out there. I was crestfallen. I was feeling like shit. Donna and I used to live in Gogol. It's 5.2 kilometers from the front door to the front door. And I walked. And I kicked every freaking rock and can and shit that came. And I was so humiliated and angry. But it was my fault. You just cannot trust.
Yeah.
You just got to go up and down. And I thought, oh, yeah, they're cooks. They know what to do. And it was just a complete disaster. I'll never forget that one. It had to happen with Len Evans.
So do the nerves still kick in when you've got someone that you're cooking for or someone in your presence? Do you still get the nerves?
No, you become more confident. I'm never cocky. I always taste everything. I don't assume that there's enough salt. I taste. You've been there, done that. We've had so many wonderful people that come through. Les Murray, the great poet who died a couple of years ago, a bit longer now. He wrote the most beautiful poem for Mildura, for the city of Mildura, that should be read by every child in this town. Should be in every calendar. We don't print them anymore, but it should be. It's that big. When you go to the cafe, it's in a great big print on the wall at the back, published in every anthology around Australia and around the world. It's the most beautiful, beautiful ode to Mildura. It brings me to tears every time I read it. It is a stunning. He wrote 4 poems called the Sunraysia Cycle, and the one on Mildura itself is absolutely stunning. And I asked Sunraysia Daily to publish, and they say, "Oh, we don't publish poetry." I said, "But it's not." And I said, "It's the man through whom the English language speaks, and he has written a poem about our city. Publish it, show it to people." Nah, what's his name? The one who's the editor, not now, but he's been there, Alan Murphy. Then I found him in the pizza cafe one Friday afternoon. He was having a drink with people, and I gave it to him. I called him. I won't repeat because I'm embarrassed, but I was so angry. Say, how can you call yourself the editor of a newspaper and you can't see the value of this man? Les came here every year. He's just the most extraordinary man ever, and did a lot for Mildura, for our national and international reputation, yeah.
Steph, your love for Mildura is amazing and very evident. Could you ever see yourself going back to Italy, though, to live, or you're...
To study, yes.
Yeah.
When I retire.
Yeah, when's that going to be?
Hopefully soon. 7-0 is not far away, and then 8-0, and then bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Well,
So you got to, I've got interest, I'm interested in. I would like to go and spend some time to read and rest and study, but wouldn't live permanently. Look, if I won as Lotto or something like that, I'd have 3 locations to move from. I particularly like the Darling River. When you go up the Darling, something changes. You still get the beautiful blue skies, on the eucalyptus and all that, but it's more isolated.
yeah.
When you go up Punkerry way, up that way, I'd love to have a pad somewhere there.
Bit more serenity.
I would like to have a pad somewhere around the goldfields, like Castlemaine.
Yeah, it's beautiful around there.
Oh, down there, there's golden afternoons when the sun sets and the grass turns into gold. It's just beautiful, beautiful colours. And of course, Italy. But our home in Italy is still there for my brother and I. And the brother lives next door. My niece lives next door. The other nephews, they're all we're a commune. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses, and we're all together there with same garden and all that. It's beautiful. So that's under control.
The other siblings, is there any other that live in Australia or
No. Sergio stayed in Italy, as I was beginning to tell you at the beginning, but then we got lost. He returned to Italy and said, "Stay. You haven't got a permanent job." That was me, Pip Squeak. 16-year-old said, "You stay. Have you seen they are advertising positions right, left, and centre for musicians in new conservatoriums? They're setting up conservatoriums like right, left, and centre." So he stayed. He applied and he got the job of his old boss at Venice Conservatorium. That was a triumph. And he then stayed until Domenico was about to come into the world, my son, so 30 years ago exactly. And I said to him, have you read the newspapers? No. I said, don't you see the Italian government doesn't want to support all these pensioners, so they're going to make you work until you die. I said, if you jump now, you can get your pension and get off. The difference between 60 and 65 will be minimal. So he got off. In time, all his colleagues remained stuck, having to continue, because there's not enough money in Treasury to pay all these pensions, you understand? And so he was free. All of a sudden, he has a pension and he's free. I said, now you can come to Australia. But I had previously written to the ambassador in Rome and said, can you reinstitute his permanent residency? And in those days, even 2-3 decades ago, our bureaucrats were humane. And the ambassador wrote back and said, of course, we know who he is. All right. Come back and apply. I mean, you wouldn't do that. They don't do that anymore now. You'd have to go through the process.
Yeah.
We lost the humanity. Yeah, so they gave him back his residency, and he started to spend 6 months here, 6 months there, 6 months here, 6 months there. He had the life O'Reilly. Sorry, I've spoken too much.
No, you haven't. That was actually
It's a cavalcade.
You've made Nick's
more.
editing life very
Breeze. It was
very easy because it's so amazing to listen to. Well, Steph, that's been absolutely incredible. I think we've both had goosebumps pretty much the whole time listening to your stories, but your passion for Mildura is absolutely incredible, and you can see the tears in your eyes as you talk about it. It's incredible.
Yeah,
so
no, this place is gold.
one of the most amazing hours I've had in a long time. So thank you very, very much for your time and speaking so openly.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
to both of you.
Thanks, Steph.
For sure, there's more. We didn't talk about produce. That old family of mine invented when they were working for the landlord, the big kahuna, they invented a winter lettuce because the peasants were dying of something like scurvy. They didn't have any fresh veggies during the winter. It's snow, cold, icy grounds. You can manage to grow something out of that. That's the story.